There is a moment almost everyone experiences, yet almost nobody can explain. It doesn't happen with a loud argument or a dramatic betrayal. It happens quietly, so quietly that by the time you notice it, something essential has already disappeared. You begin wondering why someone who once looked at you as if you were the most fascinating person in the room now seems to look straight through you. The conversations still happen. The routines continue. Nothing obvious is broken. And yet the emotional atmosphere has changed in a way you can feel but cannot describe. The strange part is that your mind immediately searches for complicated answers. Maybe you changed. Maybe they changed. Maybe you stopped trying. Maybe life became stressful. But hidden underneath all those explanations is something much older, something woven into the way the human mind experiences people. The closer we become to something, the less imagination is required to understand it. And the less imagination is required, the less mystery remains. Most people never realize that what they are grieving is not always love disappearing. Sometimes they are grieving the disappearance of mystery itself. The beginning of every connection is built on incomplete information. You meet someone, but you don't know their thoughts before they speak. You don't know how they react under pressure. You don't know which memories shape them or which fears they hide from everyone else. Your brain begins filling those empty spaces with possibility. Curiosity becomes attraction because uncertainty keeps the imagination alive. Every interaction feels larger than it really is because your mind is constantly asking unanswered questions. You don't just experience the person. You experience every version of them that could exist beyond what you currently know. That invisible world is intoxicating. It creates emotional momentum before reality has even had the chance to catch up. People often believe attraction is created by certainty. They imagine that the strongest bonds come from finally knowing everything about someone. Yet the strange paradox is that certainty satisfies curiosity while simultaneously ending it. The mind is designed to pursue what feels incomplete. Once the puzzle appears solved, attention naturally begins drifting elsewhere. Not because anyone consciously chooses it, but because curiosity has always been fueled by the unknown. This is why the early stages of almost every meaningful connection feel larger than life. The mystery isn't decorating the experience. It is quietly generating much of the emotional intensity itself. This is why memory becomes so deceptive. When people think back to the beginning of a relationship, they rarely remember ordinary conversations or uneventful afternoons. They remember how everything felt unpredictable. A glance seemed meaningful because they didn't know what it meant. Silence carried tension because they couldn't interpret it. Every shared moment felt like discovering another hidden room inside a house that seemed endless. The emotional weight wasn't created by what actually happened. It was created by what might happen next. Possibility has always been one of the strongest emotional amplifiers the human brain possesses. Then familiarity begins its invisible work. It doesn't arrive overnight. It settles in quietly, almost politely. You begin predicting reactions before they happen. You know which stories will be told again. You know which habits appear every morning and which opinions never change. Eventually surprise becomes increasingly rare. The person hasn't necessarily become less interesting. Your internal model of them has simply become more complete. The imagination no longer has enough empty spaces to explore. That realization feels uncomfortable because we are taught that closeness should continuously deepen excitement. We expect intimacy to multiply fascination forever. Yet intimacy and mystery often move in opposite directions. The closer you stand to a painting, the more detail you notice, but eventually you lose the ability to see the entire image. The same thing happens with people. Knowing someone deeply gives you access to truths that strangers never see, but it also removes the distance that once allowed imagination to breathe. This explains why nostalgia is so powerful. Nostalgia rarely longs for the person exactly as they were. It longs for the version of yourself who didn't know what would happen next. It longs for uncertainty wrapped in hope. When you revisit old memories, your mind quietly edits out the waiting, the confusion, and the anxiety that uncertainty also created. What remains is the emotional glow of possibility. You mistake that glow for proof that everything used to be better, when in reality much of it came from the fact that the story was still unfolding. There is another layer almost nobody notices. Familiarity changes not only how you see someone else but also how they see you. At first, every action becomes part of an unfolding narrative. Your opinions reveal something new. Your habits seem unique. Even your flaws appear interesting because they are unexpected. Over time, those same traits become predictable. The extraordinary slowly becomes ordinary simply because repetition trains the brain to expect it. The value of an experience is often measured not only by its quality but also by how surprising it feels. This doesn't mean people stop caring. Caring and fascination are not identical emotions. Someone can deeply care for another person while no longer experiencing the same intensity of curiosity that existed at the beginning. The mistake many people make is assuming that reduced excitement automatically means reduced love. Sometimes it does. Sometimes it doesn't. Human emotions are rarely that simple. But because mystery often disguises itself as passion, people confuse the disappearance of one for the disappearance of the other. Psychologists have long understood that the brain adapts remarkably quickly. Extraordinary experiences gradually become normal simply because they repeat. This adaptation protects us from becoming overwhelmed by constant stimulation, but it also means that even beautiful experiences slowly lose their emotional sharpness. A breathtaking view becomes the background. A favorite song eventually fades into familiarity. The same principle quietly influences relationships. The emotional system recalibrates until what once felt extraordinary becomes the new normal. That recalibration often creates silent panic. People start searching for missing excitement without realizing their own perception has changed. They assume something external must be wrong because the feeling is different. They look for hidden problems where there may simply be psychological adaptation. The danger is not that adaptation exists. The danger is misunderstanding it. When people expect permanent novelty from permanent familiarity, they set themselves against the way the human mind naturally works. This is why distance often creates such confusing emotions. When someone is no longer constantly present, imagination returns to work. Suddenly you remember details you had stopped noticing. Ordinary moments become emotionally significant because they are no longer available. Absence doesn't magically improve reality. It restores unanswered questions. It creates spaces that imagination eagerly fills again. Memory becomes less like a camera and more like an artist, painting over imperfections until the image begins glowing with impossible beauty. You may have experienced this without realizing it. Someone leaves your daily life, and weeks later they seem more captivating than they did while standing beside you every day. Nothing about them actually changed. Your access changed. Scarcity forced your imagination to rebuild what familiarity had flattened. This is one reason why memories often feel more emotionally intense than the experiences themselves. Memory edits. Imagination enhances. Reality rarely receives the same generosity. There is also something deeply human about wanting to be fully known while fearing what complete familiarity might cost. Every person wants acceptance, yet almost everyone secretly hopes to remain somewhat mysterious. We want someone to understand us completely while still looking at us with fresh eyes. It is an impossible desire because understanding naturally reduces uncertainty. The closer someone gets to the center of who we are, the fewer surprises remain. The tension between intimacy and mystery is not a flaw in love. It is built into the architecture of human perception. Perhaps that is why the most unforgettable people are rarely the ones we understood perfectly. They are often the ones who left certain questions unanswered. The friend whose motivations never became entirely clear. The stranger whose brief conversation stayed in your mind for years. The person who disappeared before every layer of their personality became familiar. The brain has remarkable difficulty closing unfinished stories. It keeps returning to them because uncertainty demands attention long after certainty has moved on. This doesn't mean mystery is always healthier than closeness. Mystery can hide compatibility just as easily as it hides disappointment. The unknown is powerful precisely because it allows projection. We imagine virtues that may not exist. We fill silence with meaning that was never intended. We mistake our own imagination for evidence. Many heartbreaks are not simply the loss of another person. They are the collapse of a story we unknowingly wrote ourselves. Once that imagined version disappears, reality feels painfully ordinary. Not because reality became worse overnight, but because fantasy had been quietly adding emotional color the entire time. The human mind is astonishingly creative. It doesn't merely observe relationships. It co-authors them. It supplies expectations, interpretations, assumptions, and dreams until separating the real person from the imagined one becomes almost impossible. Looking back, many people realize that the most painful part wasn't becoming close. It was believing closeness would preserve the emotional intensity that mystery originally created. They expected certainty to feel exactly like possibility. They expected complete knowledge to produce the same anticipation as endless questions. But anticipation lives in open doors, not closed ones. Curiosity survives where imagination still has room to wander. And maybe that is why this pattern feels so universal. Almost everyone has looked at someone they once couldn't stop thinking about and wondered when the feeling became quieter. Almost everyone has blamed themselves or the other person before recognizing that part of the change happened inside perception itself. The mind slowly replaced discovery with familiarity. It exchanged possibility for certainty. It traded imagination for knowledge. None of those changes were malicious. They were simply human. The haunting truth is that mystery never truly belongs to another person. It lives inside the distance between what you know and what you have yet to discover. As that distance shrinks, mystery quietly fades, not because anyone failed, but because certainty naturally occupies the space where imagination once thrived. That is why some faces remain unforgettable long after they are gone, while others become ordinary even while standing beside us. The difference is not always love. It is often the invisible space where the unknown once lived. And perhaps the saddest realization arrives much later, when you understand that you were never simply chasing another person. You were chasing the feeling of standing at the edge of a story whose ending had not yet been written. Once every chapter became familiar, you searched for the sensation that had disappeared, believing it had been taken from you. But it was never stolen. It dissolved the same way twilight disappears into night, so gradually that no single moment feels responsible. By the time you notice the darkness, mystery has already become memory, and memory has quietly become the only place where it can remain untouched.